Israel is now moving towards a war on three fronts. If someone doesn't really know what we know from our classes and from our own independent reading, it would look like things are spiraling out of control. Actually, things are spiraling in control in a horrible way. But the long run, this has to be. Certain people in the Israeli government have allowed things to fester for too long. There is no other country in the world that sits around and lets people shoot rockets into their land for a year, even once, much less for years and years and years. No one does that. No one puts up with that. You just can't do that to a country. The obvious example that's given is if they were shooting rockets from Mexico into Texas, New Mexico, California, I can't believe it would take 4 different rockets and 3 different instances of killing people before America would have, maybe under Biden, but under anyone else, even under Millard Fillmore, America would wipe Mexico off the map. And any country would. If France did that to England, if Germany did it to France, and all of history shows they don't put up with this. They talk the talk, but all of history shows you bother them enough and you have a world war and they get everybody else involved. Israel is expected to be the only country that people can just shoot rockets into. And the response is, okay, we're going to create an Iron Dome. Ha ha ha. You shoot rockets, so we're going to ward off your rockets. And this is how Israel's handled it. No country does that. You should have an Iron Dome. But step 1, that's step 2. Step 1 is to blow up the people who do it. And not just individuals. If it's tolerated by a society, you take down the society. Bin Laden took down the Trade Center. America did not only go after bin Laden. America took down the government of Afghanistan. Again, Biden came and we know what happened when we pulled out of Afghanistan. But until then, we took out the government of Afghanistan. Taliban, we took Taliban out of the government. That was it. That was the response to one building, obviously a big building, obviously a lot of deaths. No country puts up with this except for Israel. So to the degree that it looks like things are spinning out of control, another way to look at it is they should have been doing this a long, long time ago. And it would have been a lot better if they did. And when I say they, that's while I'm wearing my American hat as an American. And it's also we. Because Israel is we. There were 5 previous ceasefires in Gaza with Hamas, and they broke each one. And they'll always break them. If they sign one, they'll break another one. And it was only going to get worse each time. After each ceasefire, they did not turn around to start making peace and building their economy. They turned around to think, now, what did we do wrong this last time that failed to destroy Israel? We need better weapons. Let's create tunnels. That's our Iron Dome. We're going to create tunnels. So when they bomb us back, we're underground. Instead of shooting their rockets in here, we don't have that technology. So we'll go in the tunnels. What else can we do? Let's teach some guys to be paragliders. And that's what happened. With each subsequent, you know what? We didn't take enough hostages. Did you see? We took 2 hostages and they gave us 1,000 people in return for 2 hostages. We need to take more. That's a mistake. We don't take enough hostages. And so each ceasefire taught them new strategies. And this is terrible war. It could have been so much quicker. And I'm not in a position from the inside to know what else they could have done differently. I would have to think there are other things that they could have done differently. If they did what they did, or if we did what we did in the first 3 or 4 weeks of that war, That war, had it been fought the way it was the first few weeks, might have been a very quicker and different war. And then for whatever reason, the tactics changed, whether it's because of pressure from Biden or whatever it was, and it's turned into a longer war. Okay. But this war, I have become numb. I think a lot of other people also, but I don't mean Jews. I mean, even anti-Semites. I think a good thing is we're becoming numb. When the Washington Post, the New York Times put out a story that Israel killed 10 Hamas terrorists, but they also killed 40 innocent civilians, I think we're all getting numb to that. Me, I don't even care anymore. I would care if Israel made it a national policy to kill non-combatants. But if they kill one Hamas guy, and the cost of killing one Hamas guy, unfortunately, they had to kill 40 other people, that's okay with me. Absolutely. I'm not just saying to our group. I mean, it's up on you. You know, I'm out there. If they kill one Hamas guy, I'll go a step further. If they honestly, truly have intelligence information that one Hamas guy is hiding among 40 people, and they bomb them and they kill the 40 people, and it turns out the information was wrong, I'm okay with that also, as long as they did it in good faith. If they arbitrarily decide we're just going to kill 40 non-combatants in order to create terror to them, that's not right. I'd still not use the word genocide. Genocide is if the idea is let's destroy a people. There's no desire. Give us back the hostages, put down your arms, and that's the end. We don't have any destroying your people. Your people being the Arabs, because there's no such thing as Palestinians. So that's the South. And Hezbollah, same idiocy. Ehud Barak gave up southern Lebanon when the Israelis were idiots and made him the prime minister. He's a leftist and he's a coward. He in the IDF, when he was a fighter, he's brave under fire. Maybe more brave than I would be. I don't know. Maybe. But when he's not under fire in military uniform, but a diplomat or a government official, he's an absolute coward. And he's the first one to give up everything. And we know this even now. He's even possibly would fall in American terms, he'd be called a traitor and would be up on charges of treason. At that time, he was prime minister and he gave up southern Lebanon with no negotiations. Not even like now, where at least they said they'll give you, he didn't even demand a ceasefire. He just gave them southern Lebanon. And Hezbollah came in, and there was something called UNIFIL, still is. UNIFIL, UNIFIL, United Nations Interim Force for Peace Force, whatever it is. If I take a moment, I'll remember what it is. United Nations something interim force in Lebanon, UNIFIL. And their point was, now that Israel just walked out of southern Lebanon and gave you an end to anything, we, the UN, will stand here to make sure it remains a peace zone forevermore. Israelis will not be allowed to arm and bother southern Lebanon anymore, and southern Lebanon will not be a threat to Israel. And under their noses, they saw it, they didn't do a damn thing, while the Arabs started to arm. They now have like 150,000 rockets and missiles, all under the watchful eyes of the United Nations Intermediary Force, or whatever that eye is for in Lebanon. And they just, this week, the UN, every year or two or whatever, the budget, they're given an authorization, the budget runs out, and they just were reauthorized for another year or two. The money was just reapproved for another year or two for UNIFIL to be funded. Not a single word in the reauthorization about the fact that Hezbollah exists with all that they have. So this is what's going on. So it was long overdue for Israel. They should have done it 10 years ago or 5, whatever. And you attack them when they're weak. You don't wait till they have 150,000 rockets. No country does, except Israel. So now they've got to deal with that. Finally, the third front, Judea, Samaria. There is no such thing as West Bank. And we can't emphasize that enough, so we always say it. if you've ever been out there in Judea, Samaria, the word West Bank implies it's on the western bank of a body of water, like a beach. California is on the east bank of the Pacific. If you've ever been there, they're not on the bank of the Jordan River. They're way, way, way afar, miles and miles, or kilometers and kilometers from the Jordan River. Some of their capitals, Arab ones, Tulkarm and Jenin, you can't see the Jordan River from there. Even on a clear day, you cannot see forever. Up there, it's not a West Bank. Why is it called the West Bank? Because they have no name for it. On the one hand, the Arabs claim it's theirs, that it's always been theirs from time immemorial. And on the other hand, they don't even have a name for the place. They don't even have a name for the place. Jews have a name for it, Judea, Samaria. It goes back in the Bible. Yehuda, Shomron. You ask the Arabs, why don't you call it by its name, Judea, Samaria? We're not going to call it by biblical names. That already is as if to admit that your biblical account is true. Well, everything else in the Middle East is called by its biblical name. Lebanon, Tyre, Tyre, where King Hiram sent cedars from Lebanon to build the Beit HaMikdash. Aram, Damascus, that's in the Bible. We just read it this week, Aram, Damascus. Egypt, the Jews got out of, the Lord took the Hebrews out of Egypt with wonders and signs. Egypt is a biblical name. Jordan, the Jordan River. Joshua crossed the Jordan. It's a biblical name. Jerusalem, Bethlehem. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, according to the Christian Bible. In our Bible, Rachel, our mother, was buried in Bethlehem, Beit Lechem. That's how it got its name, Beit Lechem. It's a Hebrew name. Hebron, that's in the Bible. Hebron. Every single town and village, Beersheba, it's all in the Bible. All the places there have biblical names. The only place they won't call by the biblical names is Shomron and Yehuda. Because, and there's very good reason, people don't think about it. Yehuda, the plural of Yehuda is Yehudim, is Jews. And for Arabs to claim that we Arabs are the natural indigenous people to the land of Jew land, Judea, it's ridiculous. Even that doesn't wash. So they can't say we're the natural inheritors and indigenous to Jew land, Judea. So they have to have a name for it. But they don't have a name for it. So they call it the West Bank. So that's where the third front is taking place now. This is long overdue. They send in nonstop terrorists across from Judea, Samaria, and they go around stabbing people. No country puts up with this except for the city of Chicago. They just go around stabbing people. Every day, you open up the newspapers and some Jew gets stabbed. And it's just the price of doing business. It's like a bad government and a bad mindset, what they call the conceptia, the crazy conception of how to have a country, that the price of being a Jew in Israel is you have to have a certain number of stabbings every week. And they come from Judea, Samaria, primarily from places like Jenin and from Tulkarm and from others. And Netanyahu, no less than all the other jerks, they take great pride in, as prime ministers, announcing, we caught the guy that stabbed the guy to death and we killed him. Well, at that rate, every week, 3 of them kill 3 Jews, and then you catch them and you kill them. And so at that rate, if there's 1 million of them, you'll have 1 million Jews killed. Oh, this is wonderful. Don't worry, people. For every time they stab a Jew to death, we kill them back. That's not, what country thinks like that? You have to go, and we've been learning this Tuesday night in Shmuel, Bet, the 2nd Samuel, story of David. You will never have peace until you invade the enemy. And that's the only way you can have peace. You cannot just play defense. Every single country that has any aspiration to have some peace has to, at some point, invade. There's no other way. Now, I don't know how the Ukraine war with Russia is going to work out, but that was a big turning point when Ukraine invaded Russia after 2 years. Now, I don't know if it'll do it for them, but that turned the game around. If you're just going to let people punch you and be a punching bag and count your victories at, look, they punched me again and I'm still standing. You can't win a boxing match just by proving to the 3 judges that are scoring it that you're still standing after you have no body left. Every country has to invade at some point. The Civil War in the United States did not come to an end until Grant invaded Richmond, and that brought it to an end. And World War I, World War II did not end until we bombed the heck out of Germany and we dropped some bombs on Japan. You have to invade the bad guys. You cannot just play defense. And Israel, hey, we have an Iron Dome, and now we have David's sling, the mid-range missiles, and now we have Chetz 2, the arrow set for the longer range. You can't win like that. It never ends. It's an important part of the picture, but it never ends. So they have finally decided now they're going to war in Judea, Samaria also. And so you'll see stuff from that. That's the big news this week, that they opened the third front. And part of the beauty, it's not only is it about time, again, it's easy for me to sit in America and say it, but it has to be said. It has to be said. Anybody sensible knows it's horrible, but it has to be done. And it should have been done 20 years ago when it would have been so much easier. It's like the difference of having a leak and just a leak and fixing a leak, or waiting for the leak to continue until you have a flood. And by that time, you really have a problem. And so, and what's happened also is in all 3 cases, it's like Josh Shapiro, before he sold out, trying to become the vice presidential candidate that he did not become anyway. It's like Josh Shapiro wrote 30 years ago. And he wasn't the only one. I did also when I was in college, and so did hundreds, if not thousands of us, that the 1993 Oslo Accords never were going to work. Arafat never was going to make peace. You're just giving him land. He's never going to honor his side of it. There will never be peace. The only way there ever will be peace is if they educate their children for a generation of schooling that the Jews next door are our friends. But as long as you take children and continue educating them that there is no Israel and you have to kill the Jews, you will never have peace with them, and they will never be a population of innocent civilians. So that's the background. Final war. And the reason I'm going into this is the background of everything you're going to see today, among other things. Finally, if you're going to do it, this is the time to do it. It's the old thing that you gotta, if you're going to come after me, you better be sure to hit me with all you got. Because if I survive what you come at me with, you can't hurt me again. I don't want to get punched in the face. I'm scared of getting punched in the face. Oh, you punched me in the face? I'm not scared of it anymore. I lived. I survived. It hurt, but I could do this. You punch me again? Okay, now I'm unstoppable. They have nothing more they can throw at Israel. This is exactly the time. The International Court of Justice is now threatening Israel that don't you dare go into Judea, Samaria. To hell with them. You already threw the book at us. You already put out your arrest warrants. The International Criminal Court, we're going to issue. You already put out arrest warrants. What are you going to charge us with? You already charged us with everything. The United Nations is going to you always condemn us. We have nothing to lose. You all used up everything. You have no more threats. Iran is you already said you're going to wipe us out. And so this is exactly the time. And again, I'm just struck. I'm struck that Israel kills, like some operation where they kill 40 innocent Palestinians, so-called innocent, so-called Palestinians. There are no Palestinians. And the Washington Post no longer makes that the top story. It's the 5th story of the day. It's a bigger story whether Trump goes into Arlington National Cemetery and whether Tim Walz has falsely claimed another thing. And Israel kills 40 Arabs. All right, story number 6, news at 11. And this is exactly the time. So that's the background. Let's get to business. Thank you very much for being here. And it's been a busy week. And since we're in August, school's starting soon. And since school is starting soon, Jews are going back to college again. And there's that story. Busy week. But life is good. What are you going to say? Life is good anyway. But it's tough. But it's good. But it's tough. Okay, let's go. Oop, took that down because I forgot to optimize. Optimize will put those little black squares on the screen. Okay, here we go. Take it down. And here we go.
All these internet gangsters, because that's what I call them, they're internet gangsters. They don't know what's going on. They've never been over to Gaza. They don't know what's going on in Gaza, really. They're just fighting because, quote unquote, they've seen this on TV. So the whole fact of what they're doing, they're taking over, we're in jail. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure you didn't want, my dog has no place to run. You know, this is crazy.
You said we're in what?
We're in jail.
Because of the protests?
Yeah, because of the DNC, the protests, all this is going on. Everything that's going on over here really has nothing to do with us. Mm-hmm. Basically, the things that's going on with these protesters, go do it in your neighborhood. If you got a voice and your voice can be heard, well, what's wrong with you doing it or stand in the park with it? Why do you have to? They scared the out of my son. Like, that's what made me mad. My son, we know the street, they marching down the street. They're supposed to march down the street. But when you got a gang of people coming at my child and you scare the out of my child, I don't give a damn what you protesting about. My family comes before anything.
How did they scare your child?
Because they come up, you seen it, they come up the walkway, the street, everything. My child was out here riding his bike and all he see is 4,000 people coming up his walkway. How you think he's supposed to feel? You know, it's not. And then just because they're protesting, you know, our neighbors can't go to the grocery store. They're not getting their mail. It's just too much. It's too much in our area.
At this moment, 109 treasured human beings are being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. They are Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. They are from 23 different countries. Among the hostages are 8 American citizens. One of those Americans is our only son. His name is Hirsch. He's 23 years old. And like Vice President Kamala Harris, Hirsch was born in Oakland, California. On October 7th, Hirsch and his best friend, Honor, went to a music festival in the south of Israel. It was advertised as celebrating peace, love, and unity. They also went to celebrate Hirsch's 23rd birthday. As rockets began to fall, Hirsch, Honor, and 27 other young festival goers took refuge in a 5-foot by 8-foot bomb shelter. Terrorists began to throw grenades into the shelter. Aner stood in the doorway and repelled 7 of those grenades before the 8th one killed him. Altogether at the Nova Music Festival, 367 young music lovers were killed. This was just one of the many attacks on neighborhoods and communities in southern Israel on that terrible day. In total, 1,200 were killed, including 45 Americans. Hirsch's left forearm, his dominant arm, was blown off before he was loaded onto a pickup truck and stolen from his life and me and John into Gaza. And that was 320 days ago.
This is a political convention. But needing our only son and all of the cherished hostages home is not a political issue. It is a humanitarian issue. In our Jewish tradition, we say, Kol Adam Olam Umlo'o. Every person is an entire universe. We must save all these universes. In an inflamed Middle East, we know the one thing that can most immediately release pressure and bring calm to the entire region. A deal that brings this diverse group of 109 hostages home and ends the suffering of the innocent civilians in Gaza.
And the family of Israeli-American hostage Hersh Goldberg Poland is confirming his death. This hours after the Israeli army announced it has located 6 bodies in Gaza. The 23-year-old was born in Oakland and was seized by militants at a music festival during the October 7th attack. In April, he appeared in a Hamas-issued video speaking under duress. His parents, some of the highest profiling voices calling for Israel to reach a deal to bring the hostages home. They met with world leaders, including President Biden. Earlier this month, they spoke at the Democratic National Convention.
Hello, I'm Mark Brown. Get more great ABC7 content by
What happened was the Israeli army now, the Israeli military now, is going through a process of sweeping up and still fighting in Gaza. Honestly, it may never come to an end. More probably, it will come to an end when they kick it up a step. Or they're going to have to stop altogether and just call a ceasefire and let Hamas regroup and rebuild and have another war in 5 years. Again, I have no right to be a warmonger from California, but I'm just sharing what I believe many people in Israel feel too. And as many of you know, I publish a great deal, and that's the feedback I get from my writings. They need to do what we did to Germany, what America did to Germany and Dresden. They have to do Dresden. They have to Dresden Gaza. That's my opinion. And I believe if Trump gets elected, they will Dresden Gaza. He will tell them, I'll give you 5 weeks to Dresden Gaza, and then the war's over. That's what I predict Trump would do. I don't know that he's going to get elected. He may not. Anyway, what happens now is that they've gone to the next phase where they're actually going through tunnels. They've, according to the Tzahal, the IDF, they've now destroyed 80% of all the tunnels in Gaza, according to Tzahal. According to Tzahal, they've now destroyed the remaining 2 Hamas brigades in Rafah or Rafiah, and so there are no more organized brigades, according to Tzahal. And they're now going through tunnels that still exist, and before they blow them up one by one, they go inside to see if anybody's there, like maybe Yahya Sinwar. And they've been finding bodies of people who had been taken hostage and have been killed. And this week, in this particular operation, they found the bodies of 6 people who had been taken hostage. There's another story, a little bit also in our program today, about a successful case of extricating a living hostage in another tunnel. All happened this week. And when the news came of the 6 who had been killed. It is believed that they were all killed very recently, like within the last week, that they were shot down, bullets, and it's believed that they were all shot down within the past week. And Netanyahu, as the prime minister, made a statement to the nation. That's what we're going to listen to now briefly. He keeps these short and sweet. It's a hard, even though everyone knows this is what the news is going to be, everybody sensible knows. It's like what Trump said a month ago. He says, no one wants to say it, but let's face it, most of those hostages have been killed already. And, but you want to hope that that's wrong, that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And you want to hope they're still alive. And Netanyahu addressed the shocking news, though when you think about it, you know, you're hoping against hope that it's not true, but so that's what this speech is.
לב העם, אנחנו ביום קשה.
We are in a very difficult
לב
day.
העם כולו נקרע. יחד עם
Our hearts are all torn.
כל אזרחי ישראל, הזדעזעתי עד עמקי נשמתי מהרצח הנורא בדם קר.
I'm shocked with all of Israel, this cold-blooded murder
של 6 מחטופינו.
in which they killed 6 of our hostages.
כרמל גת, עדן
He's now naming the 6.
ירושלמי, הירש גולדברג פולין, אלכסנדר לובנוב, אלמוג סרוסי, ורב סמל ראשון אורי דנינו, זיכרונם לברכה.
May their memories be for a blessing, and may God avenge their blood.
השם ייקום דמם. יחד עם העם כולו, רעייתי ואני משתתפים ביגון הכבד של המשפחות.
Together with the entire nation, my wife and I are participating in this enormous grief.
כולנו מתאבלים יחד עימן.
We are all in mourning.
אני מבקש להביע הערכה עמוקה לכוחותינו, לחיילי צה"ל ולוחמי השב"כ האמיצים.
I do want to thank and express my hard regard for our armed forces and for the intelligence agencies, the Shin Bet, for having found these people.
שמסכנים את חייהם למען השבת בנינו ובנותינו.
They who are risking their very lives just to bring back our sons and daughters.
אני אומר למחבלי החמאס שרצחו את חטופינו.
I am telling the murderers of Hamas who murdered our people, our hostages,
ואני אומר למנהיגיהם,
and I say this also to their leaders,
דמכם בראשכם.
your blood is on your head.
לא ננוח ולא נשקוט. אנחנו נרדוף אתכם.
We are not going to rest. We're not going to hesitate. We are going to pursue you.
אנחנו נשיג אתכם.
We will catch you.
ואנחנו נבוא איתכם חשבון.
And we will settle accounts with you.
אזרחי ישראל,
Citizens of Israel,
אנחנו נלחמים בכל החזיתות.
we are at war on all fronts
באויב אכזר שרוצה לרצוח את כולנו.
against a severe and brutal enemy who wants to murder all of us.
רק הבוקר הוא רצח 3 שוטרים בחברון.
Just this morning, they killed three officers in Hebron. That's on the Judea and Samaria.
רעייתי ואני שולחים תנחומים מעומק ליבנו למשפחותיהם.
My wife and I are sending our deepest condolences to their families.
ראינו את האכזריות הבלתי נתפסת של רוצחי החמאס ב7 באוקטובר.
We saw the indescribable evil of Hamas on October 7.
וראינו אותה שוב במנהרות מתחת לרפיח.
And we are seeing it again in terms of what we're finding in the tunnels of Rafah.
העובדה שהחמאס ממשיך לבצע זוועות כמו אלה שביצע ב7 באוקטובר.
The very fact that Hamas continues these essentially war crimes, these evil acts like what they did on October 7,
מחייבת אותנו לעשות הכל כדי שהוא לא יוכל לבצע את הזוועות הללו שוב.
obligates us to do everything possible so that they will never again be able to do these things.
אזרחי ישראל,
Citizens of Israel,
המאמצים שלנו לשחרר את חטופינו נמשכים כל העת.
our efforts to somehow get out our hostages continue at all times.
מאז חודש דצמבר, חמאס מסרב לנהל משא ומתן אמיתי.
Since December, every effort we've made to negotiate, Hamas has refused to engage in honest negotiations.
לפני 3 חודשים, ב-27 במאי,
3 months ago, on May 7,
ישראל הסכימה לעסקת שחרור חטופים בגיבוי מלא של ארצות הברית.
Israel agreed to a peace proposal with full backing of the United States,
החמאס סירב.
and Hamas turned it down.
גם אחרי שארצות הברית עדכנה את מתווה העסקה ב-16 באוגוסט.
And then again on August 6th,
אנחנו הסכמנו,
we agreed,
והחמאס שוב סירב.
and Hamas rejected.
בימים אלה, בשעה שישראל מנהלת משא ומתן אינטנסיבי מול המתווכות, במאמץ עליון להגיע לעסקה, החמאס ממשיך לסרב בתוקף לכל הצעה.
And Hamas continues even now to turn down every possible suggestion.
חמור מכך, באותו זמן ממש, הוא רצח 6 מחטופינו.
Even worse than that, here we are talking, engaged in peace talks, and while the talks are going on, they murdered 6 of our hostages.
מי שרוצח חטופים לא רוצה עסקה.
Whoever murders hostages is not looking for a deal.
אנחנו מצידנו לא נרפה. ממשלת ישראל מחויבת, ואני מחויב באופן אישי.
From our side, we're not going to slacken, and we are obligated, I personally am obligated,
להמשיך לחתור לעסקה שתחזיר את כל חטופינו.
to find some kind of deal that will release all of our hostages
ותבטיח את ביטחוננו ואת קיומנו.
and will assure
the Albanese government is such
our security.
amazing denial about terror. First, the Albanese government.
This guy it's the Australia, that's why it's a little hard to understand the language he's speaking. But basically, Sky News in Australia is unbelievably pro-Israel. And when I scour news, sometimes it is so biased against Israel that I end up pulling it from Australia because that station, it's better than 3 of the Israeli stations.
There's such amazing denial about terrorist-run Gaza, about the danger of taking nearly 3,000 refugees from there without proper checks. So tonight, I want to show you what the ABC won't, but other commercial stations don't.
ABC, his reference is the Australian Broadcasting Company, and he's angry that the Prime Minister of Australia, who's more left-wing than they've had for a long time, just allowed 3,000 Arabs to come into the country. And the conservative side of Australia is going crazy over it because they've never had that before, and they don't want to turn into another England and France and Germany.
And what I would bet that 90% of these Albanese government's politicians have never seen. It's footage from some of the schools and the mosques and the shops and even TV and musicals of Gaza. Musicals to show you aspects of the culture that some of these refugees may come from. And I suspect you'll be shocked. And you will then wonder how your Prime Minister could talk so breezily today after having already let in 1,300 refugees from Gaza on tourist visas without any interview, with ASO checks only on some, and letting in people who even say they support the Hamas terrorists who run Gaza.
Prime Minister, does supporting Hamas pass the character test for an Australian visa?
Everyone who applies for an Australian visa is subject to the same security standard set by the same agencies and the same personnel as under the former government. And our intelligence agencies make those decisions. Our intelligence agencies have the confidence of this side of the House.
He said one of those agencies, ASIO, has said last week, well, if they say they support Hamas, not a problem. Now, it seems to me Albanese has this naive fantasy that is common on the left, that everyone is basically the same. Culture doesn't count. You can bring in someone from a place with a very different culture and they'll fit in like you wouldn't notice to our beliefs and standards. So, let us look at Gaza, which for 18 years now has been under the control of Hamas, which last October started this war with Israel by slaughtering 1,200 Israelis, raping women, beheading men, and kidnapping 251 people. What I'll show you is footage from just the last few years. Now, if you're from Gaza, you are from a terrorist enclave where some children have put on concerts, waving around guns, pretending to be terrorists. We've blurred the faces for absurd privacy rules. Summer camp for these children has been learning from Hamas terrorists how to handle weapons and shoot. If you're from Gaza, you've probably watched Gaza TV, also controlled by Hamas, which in this compilation from 2015, just for an example, coached children to hate Jews and to kill them and praise parents with that deadly message.
ليش بدك تصير مهندس؟ عشان أفجر اليهود.
رسالتي لكل أم فلسطينية أن تحث أبنائها على الجهاد. الجهاد في سبيل الله أسمى أمانينا. والذي أليست هو جهاد، أليست هو شهادة. إذا كان الموت حق فعار علينا إلا أن نموت شهداء. نعم. تحية لكل أم شهيد، تحية لكل أم شهيد حتى تبنيها على الجهاد.
والحمد لله رب العالمين، كل شباب الإسلام في قطاع غزة، كل شباب المسلمين في قطاع غزة يحبون الشهادة كما أعداؤنا الكلاب الكفار اليهود يحبون الحياة. نحن على هذا الدرب، نسأل الله تعالى أن نكون على هذا الدرب، ونسأل الله العلي العظيم أن يكون الملتقى.
نحن ننجب هؤلاء بكثرة لندفعهم حتى للموت.
Now, if you're from Gaza, you may also have gone to mosques where imams have waved knives or worn battle dress, also preaching death to Jews.
ليس لكم في بلادنا إلا الذبح. ليس لكم في بلادنا إلا الذبح والطعن.
جيبوا صاروخ واربطوني عليه وابعثوه على تل أبيب أنا جاهز.
If you're from Gaza and wanted a bit of relief from this, you wanted to watch maybe a musical on Gaza TV, Hamas TV, it could have looked like this. Lots more guns. And if you went to the shops, you could have bought even perfume in bottles shaped as rockets. Is our Albanese government seriously thinking it can take in 3,000 people from a terror enclave like that without interviews on just tourist visas? Today, Abu Rizvi, who's a former Home Affairs Deputy Secretary, claimed that all this talk about a security risk, look, seriously, it's a beat-up, no big deal. To me, that's a worry. But Rizvi did at least admit the Albanese government should not have stuck in these refugees on mere tourism visas, and said the Home Affairs Department would have given the government advice that the humanitarian option, like a humanitarian visa, was probably the better option. But the government chose a politically safer one that could hush up, it thought, but now it's blown up in their face. But look, I've shown you now some of the poisonous aspects of the culture of Gaza, where these refugees come from. And you now should ask yourself, why did our government think it should take 3,000 Palestinians from there and without even an interview and barely a check? You've seen. Does this make sense to anyone?
Is against. I'd like to know your opinion.
Ayn Rand, actually she was Jewish, changed her name from Alice Rosenbaum, is regarded as the founder of libertarianism, as the author of some extraordinarily powerful books like We the Living, The Fountainhead, and her major tome, Atlas Shrugged. And I happened to find it this week. She was on Phil Donahue. I kind of picked it up because Phil Donahue just passed away. Many of you may remember Phil Donahue and his big head of silver hair and his very enjoyable daily talk show where he'd go into the audience with his microphone. He was married to the daughter of Danny Thomas, the comedian, Marlo Thomas. She played that girl, and the Thomases were Lebanese Christians. And Phil Donahue had some very interesting guests, not the usual Hollywood celebrities only, but and he had Ayn Rand on. And it's just a little clip. Most people don't even know that Ayn Rand actually was Jewish. She had changed her name. She was born in Russia, and she took the name from the typewriter on which she typed her books. It was a Remington Rand or whatever it was, and Ein was some writer in Switzerland or something.
You know, the United States' foreign policy and what is happening in the Middle East right now?
Right now, I'm not sure we know what's happening. I think the United States foreign policy has been disgraceful for years, for decades. I would say roughly since the New Deal, and in part even before that. But if you mean whose side should one be on, Israel or the Arabs, I would certainly say Israel because it's the advanced, technological, civilized country amidst a group of almost totally primitive savages who have not changed for years and who are racist and who resent Israel because it's bringing industry and intelligence and modern technology into their stagnation.
The philosophy of objectivism.
That's right.
I just have one point that I think should be made, Ms. Rand, with time fleeting here. Your characterization of the situation in the Middle East came down rather gratuitously and in a very angry way on the Arabs, and without discussing the merits of either side in a most complicated and painful collision of cultures and peoples in our world. Why couldn't the men, the millions of men, women, and children who are Arab and who find themselves in this desperate conflict and look around wondering where peace will be, why can't they be angry with you for your characterization of them, your slap at them, your roundhouse criticism of them, when you don't seem to be able to tolerate a questioner who suggests that she disagrees with you? Characterization is you do not accept any criticism unless you level it.
No, I don't resort to terrorism. I don't go around murdering my opponents, innocent women and children. That is what I have against the Arabs. That takes the conflict out of the sphere of civilized conflict and makes it murderous. And anyone, private citizens, who resort to force is a monster. And that's what makes me condemn and despise them.
Now we go to the three fronts. Israel this week killed brother of a top official in there's no such thing as Palestinians, they're Arabs. In this case, Arabs in Lebanon, no such thing as Palestinians. So brother of top official killed in Israeli strike on a Lebanese city.
رد عليك حدا؟ شريك وين عشان تعمل؟ عفوا معلم عفوا كل عام لورا.
במבצע של צה"ל והשב"כ חולץ.
This is the good news one. Charashot tovot. This is good news. Hachatuf chulatz kishahu b'chaim. Here, this past week, Israel evacuated and found in another one of the tunnels a living hostage. Interestingly, a Muslim, what do they call those nomads down, Bedouin. You don't hear this in the news, that they also risk their lives to save Muslims. You hear about all of this apartheid and racism, and there's no news about how there's no difference. They're risking their lives to save Muslims too. And here they saved this particular gentleman, Qaid Rahman Al-Qadi. Here we go.
היום, הנה תמונתו, החטוף פרחן קאדי, בן 52 מרהט, אשר נחטף על ידי חמאס לרצועת עזה ב-7 באוקטובר.
52 years old. He was living in the southern part of Israel where the Bedouin live, and he was taken October 7.
פרחן חולץ על ידי לוחמי צה"ל מיחידת שייטת 13, חטיבה 401, יהלום ולוחמי שב"כ תחת פיקוד.
The anchors describing the particular units that were involved in the operation that found him in a tunnel, and by God's miracle, the Arabs had just left him in the tunnel, and there was no Arab to fight. They just pulled him out. There were no Arabs guarding him in the tunnel. They just left him there to die and starve to death.
אוגדה 162 במבצע חילוץ מורכב בדרום הרצועה. מעבר לכך לא ניתן לפרט מפאת סוגיות של ביטחון חטופינו, ביטחון כוחותינו וביטחון המדינה. מצבו הרפואי תקין, הוא מועבר כרגע.
They're reporting he just got out, he's in good condition, given the situation, he's been brought right now.
להמשך בדיקות רפואיות בבית החולים. משפחתו עודכנה.
He's brought right now to an Israeli hospital for them to check him out, but as things go, he's doing okay.
בפרטים וצה"ל מלווה אותה. כוחות הביטחון המשיכו לפעול בכלל המאמצים להשבת החטופים, אז כאמור.
Our military forces are continuing in Gaza to look for more hostages and free more.
חדשות טובות מאוד מאוד ומשמחות.
These are very, very good. Ma'od, of course, is very. Tov is good. These are very, very good news.
פרחן קאדי, בן 52 מרהט, אשר נחטף ב-7 באוקטובר, חולץ היום על ידי לוחמי צה"ל. בוא נגיד שלום להלל ביטון רוזן, כתבנו הצבאי. הלל, חדשות טובות מאוד היום.
כן, חדשות בהחלט טובות, אני חושב שזאת בשורה מצוינת.
This is wonderful news, it's just great.
נותרנו עם 108 חטופים בשבי החמאס, הצלחנו להביא...
But there are still 108 hostages still in captivity. We don't know whether they're alive.
עוד אחד...
and we brought...
מעם ישראל חזרה הביתה. אותו פאיד נחטף ב-7 באוקטובר משטח העוטף, והוחזק עד כה 10.5 חודשים בשבי החמאס.
He's been held 10.5 months by Hamas.
במהלך פעילות סריקות יחסית שגרתית, ממה שאני מבין, מתחת לקרקע של...
From what I understand, they found him under the ground.
יחידות מיוחדות וגם חטיבת שריון. לא נציין עדיין מיקום, כי מדובר עדיין על פעילות.
Again, they're just breaking news, and we'll go on to more information from some other source, because he's repeating sort of what we just had.
הביתה, ברוך השם.
So you know that word Habibi. Here you have Lochmei Tzahal Higiyu, the armed forces of IDF arrived. Hamachablim Borchu, and the terrorists fled. Hachilutz Hadramati shel this guy Meham Minarot. This is the dramatic freeing of this guy from the tunnels. And the first way he's greeted, it's the IDF guy jokes to him because all of the Bedouin have beards. He says, Ata b'li zakan. You don't have a beard. What's with you?
כך נראה פרחן קאדי דקות אחרי שחולץ מהשבי.
And this is the way Farhan Qadi looked moments after he was released from captivity.
רזה, מחייך ומשוחח עם מפקד אוגדה 162 תת-אלוף
He's talking with officers of the IDF.
כהן ויחד עם מפקד שייטת 13 אלוף משנה א'. קאדי נחטף ב-7 באוקטובר.
Does this guy have regular clothes? Yeah, we're bringing uniform for him.
אוקטובר מאזור קיבוץ ישע שבעוטף והוחזק בידי חמאס במשך
326 He was held 326 days by Hamas.
26 ימים. הבוקר כוחות שייטת 13 חילצו אותו מתוך המנהרה.
This morning that unit freed him from a tunnel in which he was held in southern Gaza.
שבה הוחזק.
Like when there's this pressure from Biden, Harris, we want them out of southern Gaza. They've accomplished what they had to accomplish. Well, they just freed a living person in southern Gaza. You don't hear it reported in the United States that way, but they're still accomplishing incredible things in southern Gaza.
בדרום רצועת עזה.
הלוחמים הגיעו למיקום הודות למודיעין מדויק.
Our soldiers reached the location thanks to excellent Shin Bet intelligence.
שנאסף באגף המודיעין, שב"כ ומפקדת החטופים. אנחנו פועלים למימוש המשימה הנעלה, להשבת כל החטופים כולם בכל המאמצים.
We are working to try to get out all the hostages using every possible effort.
כוחות ממשיכים להילחם בנחישות בשטח.
Our forces are fighting with determination in all parts of all parts of Gaza.
על כן ישנם פרטים נוספים שלא אוכל לפרסם בשלב זה.
And there are additional pieces of information I'm not at liberty to reveal at this time.
פי הערכות פרחן ננטש על ידי המחבלים שהחזיקו בו, וכשהכוחות של שייטת 13 הגיעו אליו הוא הותר ללא מחבלים בסביבתו, והחילוץ הושלם ללא קרב. גם חטופים נוספים לא הותרו יחד עם פרחן.
They did not find any terrorists with Farhan when they got him because he was all alone. They'd left him to die. By the way, I often show Channel 14, the more national patriotic station, but Con 11 is their PBS, the public broadcaster.
162 פועלת בחודשים האחרונים בדרום הרצועה, יחד עם יחידות רבות העוסקות באיתור מנהרות והשמדתן.
So they're continuing to go through the tunnels and destroy them throughout Gaza.
בן ה-52 הוא החטוף השמיני שחולץ מרצועת עזה בחיים.
This guy is the 8th hostage who has been brought out alive.
ברוך שובך הביתה, פרחן קאדי.
We bless you upon your return home.
אני מברך את צה"ל והשב"כ על עוד מבצע שחרור מוצלח. אנחנו פועלים ללא לאות להחזיר את כל חטופינו. אנחנו עושים זאת בשתי דרכים מרכזיות.
We're doing all we can to release free all of our hostages. We're doing it in two ways, through negotiations and with efforts with military efforts to free them out.
במשא ומתן ובמבצעי שחרור.
גם ברחבי העולם סיקרו את חילוצו של פרחן, ישראלי מוסלמי שנחטף באכזריות בידי חמאס והוחזק בשבי.
We're showing that it's been reported all over the world in different countries how Israel just got this guy out.
With breaking news out of Gaza.
Elite forces have rescued a hostage.
Kadeh Farhan al-Qadi was rescued in a complex operation.
Israeli special forces rescuing Kaid Farhan al-Qadi.
Now they're reminding us previous releases as well. Some of you may remember from a previous Sunday when they got the Argentinians out and some other cases.
ב8 ביוני חילצו לוחמי הימ"מ את נועה ארגמני, אנדרי קוזלוב, שלומי זיו.
On June 8th, the IDF freed and evacuated those guys.
מוקז'אן במבצע ארנון, שבו נפל רב פקד ארנון זמורה.
But tragically, this gentleman died, was killed during the operation. He was one of the soldiers who freed the others.
ב-12 בפברואר חולצו.
On February 12th, that was the Argentinian one when they took out those two. Remember, the new president of Argentina had just come to Israel, Western Wall, prayed, and the next day these guys got liberated.
פרננדו מרמן ולואיס הר במבצע יד הזהב. ב-29 באוקטובר במבצע ראשית האור חולצה התצפיתנית אורי מגידיש.
And then that lady was freed last October 12th or something.
בנוסף חילצו כוחות צה"ל מתוך הרצועה 27 גופות של חטופים.
And they have also found tragically 27 hostages who have been killed, but 27 bodies have been retrieved for burial in Israel from out of the tunnels.
108 חטופים וחטופות נותרו בשבי החמאס ברצועה.
There are still 108 people who were taken, who were kidnapped, and they're in Gaza. We don't know about their status, whether they're alive or not, but 108.
כן. כן. אהלן וסהלן יא ביבי יא אבו.
They give him the telephone. He's in the hospital, and they tell him the prime minister's on the phone. I'm so happy to talk to you. I also am happy. I've waited for this day.
حكيت للرجال زي تشبع لك.
Oh, this is maybe not Netanyahu, but maybe his father, Abu Yair, whoever that is. Who's he talking to? Rosh Mמשלה. Yeah, it says Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking on the phone with this guy. Again, Farhan Kadi. Have you seen your family? Yeah, my two sons are here. I want to tell you that we're all deeply emotional at this moment from the depths of our heart. For you and for your family. I thank you very much for all of this, that you came and that I've been able to reach this point that I can see my family and be here. You really did holy work. Holy work you did. There are other people still waiting to get out.
יש עוד אנשים שמחכים.
I want you to know, says Netanyahu, we're not forgetting any of them, just as we did not forget you.
אני מודה לכם מאוד מאוד.
We have to get them all out.
מזמין אותך אבו יאיר.
I thank you very, very much. I invite you, Abu Mazmin Otcha. I invite you, and he calls him Abu Yair. Oh, Abu, you know the Hebrew word, I didn't know. You know the Hebrew word Abba, father. So I guess some Arabs don't refer to him as Netanyahu or Benjamin Netanyahu or Bibi, but they refer to him as Abu Yair, the father of Yair. Netanyahu's son is named Yair Netanyahu. And that's not unusual among Arabs to refer to someone as Abu so-and-so, referring to the father of so. It's interesting that he calls him by the name Yair's father rather than calling him prime minister. But again, he's a Bedouin. They're like quasi-independent people. Who knows? And so Netanyahu says, again, thank you. The most important, I want you to hug the whole family. I want you to know that the Jewish people are all with you and with all the others. Inshallah. Inshallah is their way of saying like God willing. Inshallah.
Israel says it's killed a Hamas commander in Jenin in the West Bank.
Okay, so this is Judea, Samaria. So we've done the front up north in Lebanon, where they killed that number 2 guy, and then we just done what's gone on in Gaza. Now we go to the third. That's why we did that opening segment where I gave a sense of what's going on. Israel now is upping its game in Judea and Samaria. The two main centers of terror activity in Judea, Samaria are Jenin, in English, Jenin, and Tulkarm, in English, Tulkarm, Tulkarm.
on the third day of its military operation there, an operation which has attracted international criticism, including from the UK.
But who cares? Because you already have international criticism for Gaza. So if you're going to do it, may as well do it now. It gets lost in the shouting anyway.
Today, the Foreign Office said it is deeply concerned about Israel's methods and reports of civilian casualties and the destruction of civilian infrastructure.
Yeah, but who cares? Because that's what they say about Gaza.
Lucy Williamson reports now from inside the West Bank. And
it's not the West Bank, it's Judea and Samaria. Okay, good to get this picture. Take a look. This is the Jordan River, okay? On the east side is a country that currently is called Jordan. On the west side, you have Israel. And then the anti-Semites want to say that this is Arab. This is Arab. They want to say that this and this is a country called Palestine. What kind of country is that? Half of it over here, half of it over there, with all of that Israel in between? Not even the two different cultures. They have nothing to do with each other. They're governed by Hamas. They presently are governed by al-Fatah. But also West Bank. Take a look at this point here. Here's the Jordan River. Do you think this is on the West Bank? It's more practically on the East Bank of the Mediterranean Sea. You tell me. There's a bank. There's a bank. What is this called, the West Bank? It's Samaria. That's what it is. This likewise. These are not on the banks of a river. It's because, as I said at the outset, Arabs have no name for the place because they never had a government there. They never had anything there. They have no historical connection to Judea and Samaria. We continue.
Warning that her report contains distressing images right from the start.
On a road outside Jenin this morning, Israeli forces came face to face with the man they believe led Hamas here. Inside the white car, Wissam Khazem, shot dead by the army. And with him, 2 other men who tried to escape, killed in an airstrike as they ran. Israel says all were involved in shooting and bombing attacks.
Israel says.
The Eastern
it's so important to know how to listen to the news and read it. This person either could have said those men were involved in bombing attacks, or she could have said Israel says those men were involved in bombing attacks. See the difference? Listen carefully to how they talk.
Areas of Jenin and its refugee camp have both been sealed off for the past 3 days, and there are fresh reports of casualties, including an 82-year-old man who paramedics said was shot 9 times.
Okay, so you've got that 82-year-old man. So they're going now. Why did they kill an 82-year-old man? Was the 82-year-old man simply sitting in a senior citizen home watching television, or was Hamas or some other terrorist right within his range? They don't tell you.
This morning, the army pulled out of Nur Sham's camp in Tulkarm. The destruction there, enough to remind residents of a war. Yazan said the army laid wires from her home to blow up 2 of the houses opposite. Families she's known for decades.
Now, why would they have bombed the houses? Were they just looking to destroy Arabs? If so, why have they waited 30, 40 years to do it? If that's what they want. Could it be that there was Hamas in those houses?
I have 10-year-old triplets, and they trapped us in a room. Then they started the explosions. 5 explosions in total. Imagine the walls shaking and your children clinging to you. It feels like we're in Gaza.
We met Fadwa, stranded by the rubble that used to be her neighbour's house.
They told us that we have tunnels and we smuggle the armed groups to this house. He claimed that...
What does the word fatwa mean? Is that like a decree by an ayatollah that someone has to be killed and they put out a fatwa?
We have tunnels, like those in Gaza. He brought a drill and dug into the floor, and all he found was a sewer drain.
Later, she shows us the broken floor. Beneath it, what appears to be a drain, too small for a person to fit through. You hear a lot of comparisons here now with the war in Gaza.
This is still a very different situation, but almost a year of the Gaza war has changed attitudes and tactics on both sides. It's changed the sense of threat Israel feels from this conflict here. And many people are saying it's changing Israel's response.
Negotiating the damaged streets, a funeral procession for Ayed Abu Hajja, a 69-year-old with a disability, shot dead by a sniper, neighbors said.
With a disability. In other words, the sniper was waiting to find an Arab, the implication, who's got a disability. Like he could even notice that a guy had a disability. Like that's the strike. Let's go into, as though they were saying, let's go into Judea, Samaria, and go after people with disabilities. It's all subtle stuff, very subtle stuff. What about the Israeli soldiers that come in healthy and leave Gaza or somewhere else with a disability, losing an arm like that boy Hirsch, Poland, Goldberg? Or what about that? They don't talk about that.
When he opened his window, alongside it, gunfire.
Have you ever been to a funeral? I have been as a rabbi to many funerals, unfortunately. I've never been to a funeral where so many people bring rifles and shoot them throughout the funeral.
For the local leader of the armed groups here, Mohammed Jabbar, also killed in this operation. A show of force from Tulkarm's armed fighters, less than a day after Israel's army withdrew.
And that is why Israel has gone into Tulkarm, because that exists. If it were a peaceful, normal place, they wouldn't be in Tulkarm. But you already have a substantial Hamas-based terrorist movement now. And by the way, the leader of Judea, Samaria, Arab thing, what they call the Palestine Authority, there's no such thing as Palestine, is Mohammed Abbas, or otherwise known as Abu Mazen. And he was elected to a 4-year term, and he's now in the 19th year of his 4-year term. After getting elected, he has prevented any future elections. 19th year of his 4-year term, and he won't allow elections because all the surveys and polls indicate that Hamas would win an overwhelming majority in an election. So Israel has, and has had for 20 years, a population, another Hamas population over there. And that's why they won't let them have a so-called two-state. There will never be an Arab state, an Arab government west of the Jordan River. And after October 7, even the fools on the Israeli left, most have come to the realization you can never, ever again let them have another sovereignty.
Williamson, BBC News, Jenin.
تيجوا مخانين؟ هنا عصرنا تسوق خلينا يرى علينا تفرق بولا ابرك نفتخها
Keep your eyes on these two who were fleeing from the car. Not only are these two murderers, and they finally got their justice, but we're going to hear from one of them in a moment, a post he put out the day before. Notice Israel claims. Israel claims. As easily it could have been said, the targeted militants in the area have been supplied weapons by Iran, but Israel claims. Like I'm claiming today is Sunday. That's the beauty. The UN already condemned everything else, so who cares? This guy, his last message before he got neutralized in the one before.
طبعا أهل غزة اللي بيعيشوا فيه هسه.
I'm not sure how clear the lettering is. It's a very thin lettering. I see it clearly, so I'll read it out loud as I'm playing it. I won't keep breaking. Anyway, this guy is Mohammed Abu Shuja Jaber, leader of the Al-Quds Brigades. That's a Hamas terror group in Tulkarm. And we just saw what happened to him. What the people of Gaza are enduring now is also endured by the prophets.
أيام الرسل عاشوا الصبر والمقاومة والمعنويات وهذا كله احنا
نتعلم منها.
الحرب من سنة الحرب 10 شهور.
So he's saying I'm in Tulkarm and Judea and Samaria, and we're learning from the people of Gaza.
يبدؤون تلك الساعات
The
الكتاب.
fighters are still excelling in the battlefield. Thousands of martyrs, fighters and civilians, mostly civilians,
من الأطفال,
children to the elderly.
وكبار بالسن ومنها يعني من يومين صلاة الفجر اغتالوا ما يزيد على 100 طفل بحجة انه قيادات وبحجة انه يوجد مسلحين بس عشان يحققوا انجازات ان احنا هينا عملنا وان احنا سوينا وانه مش عارف شو في فلان في قيادة وفي طبعا لا بكشفوا بس انه اطفال مدرسة اغتالوا بيساووا رسالة الأهل غزة استمروا وإحنا معكم إحنا نتعلم منكم نسأل الله إنه إنه ربنا يعني أجر وثواب إنه بلزم شيء عندنا كشجاع إنه يعطيكم أنتم أهل الصبر أنتم أهل الثبات وهذا الشيء أثبت لنا يعني بصراحة إنه طول عمرنا أهل غزة بس إنه بعد هذه المعركة يعني بعد الطوفان أثبتت لجميع العالم إنه شعب غزة قادر على انتهاء.
Prove to the entire world that the people of Gaza are capable of ending, quote unquote, Israel.
مش شعب غزة فقط لهذا قادر.
People of Gaza are single-handedly able to end, quote unquote, Israel.
انتهاء دولة إسرائيل.
Now into the third day of the operation this week in Judea, Samaria. Occupied. You notice not only West Bank occupied, so already there's your news. AFP is Agence France Presse or whatever, it's French press agency. So right away, first of all, you have this funeral with how many rifles pointed up. That's number one. And already the impartial news tells you it's the occupied West Bank as opposed to the liberated Judea Samaria. There are no Palestinians. They're Arabs of Judea Samaria. Refer to them not as a Palestinian terrorist group. First, there's no such thing as Palestinians. They're Arabs. And militant, they're terrorists. If it would be the other way around, they would refer to our people as terrorists. They're militant, like a bunch of college kids breaking a window.
بس فرق بيننا وبين غزة يابا
لا فرق بيننا ولا بين غزة.
Us refers to the people of Judea Samaria, the so-called West Bank resident. It's important for us to know that the war in Judea Samaria is the same as the war against Gaza, the same kind of terrorists, and the same need to eradicate them.
احنا غزة تاني، خاصة مخيمنا وحارة المنشية، حارة الشهداء. احنا مش سائلين عن اشي، احنا المهم شبابنا يكونوا بخير، مش سائلين عن الدنيا كلياتها.
Notice how they put quotation marks around Israel saying it's counterterrorism. And they put that into quotation marks. It's unbelievable how blatant the false news and the prejudice is.
وهذا القتل وهذا التشريد وهذا الدمار أيها الاحتلال لن يزيد الشعب الفلسطيني إلا صمودا، لن يزيده إلا عنفا، لن يزيده إلا تمسكا بأرضه. نقول لك أيها الاحتلال كل هذه الممارسات ستولد وتفجر فينا البراكين. نبقى مدافعين، لقد قلت صغارهم سينسون، ها هم صغار فلسطين.
Anti-Israel protests have already returned to Ivy League schools as chaos erupts at Cornell. Dozens of protesters filling the campus on the first day of class, holding signs calling for the People's School and a free Palestine. Cornell releasing a statement saying, quote, their guidelines for the protests are not to punish individuals or suppress the views being promoted, but to protect the rights of all in our community. Quite a statement. Amanda Silverstein is a junior at Cornell and joins me now. Amanda, do you feel any safer than when you left campus in the spring?
Frankly, not at all. After the past year of unrest and lawlessness, this comes as no surprise at all to me. And the administration's weak response that we just saw them put out yesterday, and their inaction on behalf of disciplining these protesters send a clear message that it's not themselves who have been dictating university policy, but it's the very students who the policies are meant to regulate.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul, where Cornell is in New York State, met with university presidents yesterday about campus safety. After the meeting, she released a statement saying public safety is my top priority. And she went on to talk about all these resources and all these meetings that they've had to prepare for this. Again, she's saying she's prepared. The school had all summer to prepare. Why did this happen on day one, do you think?
I think that the university is allowing their own fear of what unhinged chaos that these students can bring upon the school to dictate their decisions. And, you know, as we're starting a new school year, it's imperative that these administration members keep in mind that these overtly anti-Semitic and blatantly illegal actions will continue on the campus so long as they go unpunished, and that the administration needs to hold students accountable, or they are in effect condoning this behavior and allowing it to persist.
Here's what Cornell told Fox News directly. Quote, we are appalled by the graffiti spray painted and glass shattered overnight along the front entrance of Day Hall. Acts of violence, extended occupation of buildings, or property damage, including graffiti, will not be tolerated and will prompt an immediate response from public safety. I don't know about you, Amanda. I don't know if any of this would be happening if Cornell and other schools had a zero tolerance policy. Like, you do this one, you're expelled. You're never coming back to Columbia, Cornell, UPenn, any of these schools. Do you think zero tolerance is a policy that is needed to put an end to this?
I think it's a policy that's needed, but given what we've seen over the past year at Cornell and many similar institutions, it's unlikely to be instituted and carried out by these administration members. But actions truly do speak louder than words. So I'm really waiting eagerly to see what they do in response to such violence and hatred taking place on campus.
We have a situation where all students, Jewish and non-Jewish, are trying to just get an education, prepare themselves for their next career. And I view everything, because I'm an old man now, through the lens of a parent. So I think about my girls, I should say. How do your parents cope with you being on this campus, trying to learn, and them being scared for your safety?
Yeah, I get near daily texts, probably even more frequent, from family members checking in. And you know, just a few years ago, when I agreed to come to Cornell, I could have never imagined that this would be my experience. Many students like me just want to go to class, and the fact that we're constantly being prevented from doing so in a normal manner, given the ridiculous tuition dollars that we pay every year to the school, is really frustrating.
Unreal. Amanda Silverstein, thank you for your time. Stay safe up there, and good luck trying to get your education.
If there's one professor like that shy David-I guy, how do we get him, in trouble? That might silence 100 other professors. If you're able to take out somebody like that and make an example, that might shut up 100 more.
Carly, President Biden also addressing the war in Gaza and the anti-Israel protesters that broke past DNC security and filled the streets of Chicago during his speech last night.
We're working around the clock, my Secretary of State, to prevent a wider war and reunite hostages with their families. And finally deliver a ceasefire and end this war. Those protesters out in the street, they have a point.
Meantime, Jewish high school graduates from an elite New York City high school are avoiding Columbia University, with no graduates enrolling this upcoming year for the first time in decades because of the mass anti-Semitism on Columbia's campus. Rory Landsman is the senior counsel at the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under Law, a former New York State Assemblyman and former New York City councilman whose daughters attend that high school, and he joins me now. Rory, thanks for being here. Before we get to the rejection of all these students of Columbia University, I want to get your reaction to what you heard the President of the United States say last night, that Hamas sympathizers, quote, have a point.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you. Look, the war is causing a tremendous amount of frustration and unhappiness in all of us, including those of us who, like myself, are ardent supporters of Israel and its efforts to destroy Hamas. I think everybody would like to see a path to this war concluding, with our hostages returned home, Hamas defeated and unable to launch a similar kind of attack on Israel, and of course Israel dealing with the situation in the north, which isn't getting enough attention, where you have tens of thousands of Israelis displaced from their homes because Hezbollah is launching rockets and missiles into northern Israel.
Sure.
So I think what the president was saying last night was that we have to have a rational way forward, and our vision of that is one where Hamas is defeated and our hostages come home.
Understood. Back to the Columbia rejection by all these students. I mean, let's be real. This high school that we're talking about is sort of a feeder school to Columbia University over the years. And to have not one single individual decide, hey, I'm going to Columbia University.
For those of you who know New York or know the yeshiva landscape, they're talking about Ramaz. That's up on the East 80s in Lexington Avenue, affiliated with the Kehillat Jeshurun. For many decades, Rabbi Lookstein was the rabbi there. His father, Joe Lookstein, was the rabbi. Then Haskell Lookstein, Joe is dead, Haskell retired, and it's still KJ, they're known. And Ramaz is one of the two or three with the highest, as they say, feed into Ivy League schools, primarily Columbia, because it's in New York and Columbia's New York. And it was a big news item this week that nobody from Ramaz, none of their graduates, applied to Columbia.
Is sending them quite a message, isn't it, Rory?
Well, it's Jewish families, Jewish students voting with their feet, so to speak. Our entire community is deeply concerned that our students, our young people, would go off to a university and be harassed, be treated unequally, be unable to enjoy and experience and get out of college what we expect them to be able to, and for generations, what they have been able to. The presence at Columbia University of Jewish students, including students from Ramaz, where my daughter attended, has helped make that university what it is. But today, Jewish parents have to consider, and students themselves, whether or not the university they go to, no matter how elite or shiny or prestigious the name on the door is going to keep them safe and take seriously their responsibility to combat anti-Semitism on campus.
Yeah.
You know, I have to share my own mixed feelings because as an Orthodox rabbi, I'd much rather see these kids go to Yeshiva University and Stern College and other place, Touro College, and learn more Torah and less Marxism and other nonsense. But there's a part of me, as a graduate of Columbia University, there's a part of me that says that that this is not the way, that it's cowardice, and that's not the way. That the way is you go back and you fight these people, because if the way you respond to this kind of stuff is you just essentially run away and say, well, you've made it the place inhospitable for us to go, so they've accomplished their goal of making the place Judenrein. And if school after school, it's very nice, all the Jews are going to go to Yeshiva University and to places like that, but you're essentially turning Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Cornell, Penn, Berkeley, Stanford, etc. You're turning them into Judenrein schools. You're accomplishing in a reverse way what the Nazis did. You're just driving the Jews out. And that part bothers me very, very much. So I'm sharing with you the week's news, but I don't want to leave this alone like this is a proud message. I personally found this message repugnant. What I want to see is Jews going to Columbia and beating the crap out of these people. And if you don't have the guts to go and beat them up, go and litigate and bring lawsuits right away. Show up the first time, bring camera. Everybody there has smartphones and they take all their stupid pictures for TikTok. Go ahead and take pictures right away of stuff going on in little videos and bring lawsuits, federal lawsuits. That's my philosophy. And that's why I'm here, not to just show you. But this is what's going on, and you should know. We're winding down, by the way.
The FBI is investigating after 2 Jewish students were attacked on Pitt's campus late last night. Police say the attacker used a glass bottle to hit them in what's believed to be a targeted attack. KDKA's Chilakase Adele has a reaction from students.
The attack happened here outside Pitt's largest landmark, the Cathedral of Learning. And many students we spoke with today, they're concerned just 1 week into the school year. Friday's attack sent shockwaves through the Pitt community. Alyssa Tyndall and her roommates were hearing bits and pieces.
Our roommates got word from like group chats and class group chats and group me's, and we all were just kind of like trying to get as much information as soon as possible, as fast as possible.
Police say 2 officers noticed a group waving for help outside on the Forbes Avenue sidewalk right before 6 p.m. The officers say 52-year-old Jared Buba was being detained by one of the victims. Police say Buba struggled with them to avoid arrest, but they eventually handcuffed him.
One roommate was still walking, like she stayed away from Kathy. We told parents who were coming to stay away from Kathy.
Police say 2 Jewish students were hit by a glass bottle. Those students told police they were hit from behind, one in the neck, the other on his cheek. One of them said he tackled Buba to the ground. They were both wearing yarmulkes.
Being targeted just for a part of your community makes you think like no one's safe. It makes you shake up because of it.
Police say Buba was wearing a keffiyeh. The FBI is investigating this as a possible hate crime. Pitt is not mincing words.
Guy's wearing a keffiyeh, slams 2 kids with yarmulkes from the back, and they're calling it as a possible hate crime.
Words, saying in part neither acts of violence nor anti-Semitism will be tolerated.
Anti-Semitism and ICE has no place here, especially at Pitt. I think we all got to learn to love each other.
Many students told us they were frustrated. There were no alerts from the school's emergency notification system.
When we don't get like an official notification from the school, there's a lot of rumors going around.
The school responded to those concerns. It says in part, as there was an immediate arrest and no ongoing threat to the public, no ENS message was sent.
Pitt doesn't take them as seriously as they should be.
Riley Odom is concerned about the school's response, but concerned about the attack in the first place.
To see stuff like this happen, it's unreasonable. It's illogical. It doesn't make any sense.
Mayor Gainey is also commenting on this attack. He says that he's praying for the 2 victims, and he also says the city is supporting Pitt police and authorities. In Oakland, I'm Chilakase Adele, KDK TV News.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was asked a question about anti-Semitism, and out of nowhere, she basically discards the question and answers about Islamophobia, showing that she
level of concern right now about the potential rise of anti-Semitism in light of everything that's going on in Israel?
So a couple of things. We have not seen any credible threats. I know there's been always questions about credible threats, and so Just want to make sure that that's out there. But look, Muslim and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. And certainly President Biden understands that many of our Muslim, Arab Americans and Palestinian American loved ones and neighbors are worried about the hate being directed at their communities. And that is something you heard the president speak to in his address.
You heard
his level of concern right
You heard that question again that she's answering?
now about the potential rise of anti-Semitism in light of everything that's going on in Israel.
So a couple of things. We have not seen any credible threats. I know there's been always questions about credible threats, and so just want to make sure that that's out there. But look, Muslim and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. And certainly President Biden understands that many of our Muslim, Arab Americans and Palestinian American loved ones and neighbors are worried about the hate being directed at their communities. And that is something you heard the president speak to in his address just last Thursday. And so one of the things that the president has done is directed his team, Homeland Security team, to prioritize prevention and disruption of any emerging threats that could harm the Jewish, the Muslim, Arab Americans, or any other communities. And that is something that the president has sought to do and since day one.
In a world marred by decades of conflict, hatred, and distrust, stories of transformation are rare, but they exist. One such story is that of Mohammed Masad, a man who once led a life defined by terror, but who now stands as a powerful voice for peace and understanding. Born in 1975 in the village of Burkin, Mohammed Masad was raised in a world where violence was a daily reality. By the age of 8, he was already on the path to becoming a terrorist. By 13, he was actively participating in the First Intifada, throwing firebombs and grenades at Israeli soldiers, earning his place as a local leader of the Fatah Black Panthers. But beneath this hardened exterior lay a conscience that would eventually lead him down an unexpected path. In the midst of the First Intifada, Mohammed set out on a mission with 2 friends to kidnap Israeli hitchhikers, a mission that would change his life forever. They spotted a young Jewish woman standing alone at a bus stop. It was the perfect target, or so it seemed. But in that moment, something inside Mohammed shifted. A wave of panic hit him, a wave he couldn't explain. He ordered the driver to speed away, leaving the woman unharmed. It was a moment of humanity that he couldn't ignore, a moment that would haunt him for years to come. Years later, Mohammed reflects on that day. Perhaps it was the memory of a kind female Israeli soldier who used to give him bread with chocolate spread when he was a child. Perhaps it was a deeper moral code buried beneath years of hatred. Whatever it was the first sign that Mohammed's journey was far from ordinary. After being arrested and spending time in an Israeli prison, Mohammed was released as part of the Oslo Accords. He joined the ranks of the newly established Palestinian Authority, expecting to help lead his people to freedom. But what he found was far from the ideals he had fought for. The Palestinian Authority, led by Yasser Arafat, was not the beacon of hope he had envisioned. It was a regime marked by brutality, corruption, and oppression. Mohammed witnessed firsthand the horrors of the Palestinian Authority, torture, extortion, and the manipulation of his people. He saw how the very leaders who promised freedom were instead driving their own people into despair. This was not the Islam he believed in, and it was not a future he wanted for his people. Unable to reconcile his values with the actions of the PA, Mohammed made a bold decision. He left the Tanzim, the military arm of Fatah, and eventually made contact with the Israeli security services. He became a collaborator for the Shin Bet, a move that would change his life forever. Today, Mohammed Masad is an Israeli citizen living in Haifa. He is a proud Arab, a devout Muslim, and a staunch advocate for peace and democracy. He has dedicated his life to exposing the truth about the Palestinian leadership and to helping his fellow Arabs see that there is a better way, a way that does not involve violence and hatred. Since October 7th, Mohammed has been outspoken about the dangers of allowing the PA or Hamas to control Gaza. He knows their capabilities and he knows the destruction they bring. But more than that, he knows the truth that Israel, despite its flaws, is a nation that stands strong because it is guided by principles that its enemies fail to understand. Mohammed Massad's journey from terrorist to advocate is a testament to the power of conscience, the possibility of change, and enduring hope for a better future. His story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, the light of humanity can shine through. If you found Mohammed's story as inspiring as we did, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories. Share.
At a time when Europe's future hangs in the balance, its two most senior Christian leaders, the head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis, and the head of the Church of England, Archbishop Justin Welby, have abandoned their most sacred duty to protect and defend the values of the Bible. The world is locked in a civilizational battle of values, threatened by terrorism and violent jihad. Now is the time for religious leaders to come to the defense of society, to speak up for Western values and freedoms. Instead, Pope Francis and the Anglican Archbishop are silent, indifferent to the murder of Christians in Africa and to the threat of terrorism throughout Europe, and outright hostile to Israel's attempts to battle these jihadi forces led by Iran. As the latest example, Archbishop Welby has come out strongly in support of the recent International Court of Justice ruling against Israel, which puts him in direct opposition to the Bible. The International Court of Justice, the ICJ, in an advisory ruling, declared Israel to be an illegal occupier of Palestinian land in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. Archbishop Welby gave his full backing to the ruling. This was his statement. The International Court of Justice has made clear that Israel's presence in the occupied Palestinian territories is unlawful and needs to end rapidly. It is clear that ending the occupation is a legal and moral necessity. The Archbishop puts great trust in the ICJ and the system of international law. This trust is misplaced. The ICJ is an arm of the United Nations, an institution dominated by despotic regimes. Of the 193 members of the UN General Assembly, only 84 are ranked as free societies by Freedom House, a think tank in the US. The UN is thus dominated by regimes who don't subscribe to the key tenets of liberal democracy and who are antithetical to the foundation values of the Church. Though the ICJ maintains a veneer of objective legal procedure, in effect it is nothing more than a political body to advance the UN's anti-Western and anti-Israel agenda. The ICJ doesn't even try to appear unbiased anymore. The presiding judge is from Lebanon, a country currently at war with Israel. Furthermore, there are compelling legal arguments that the ICJ judgment is badly flawed. According to international law, the West Bank is, contrary to the ICJ's ruling, disputed rather than occupied territory. Indeed, there has never existed a Palestinian state on this land or part thereof. The West Bank was under Jordanian control before the 1967 war. But there's a much more serious issue at stake, and I address it as one religious leader to another. How can the head of the Church of England support an ICJ ruling that deems the West Bank and East Jerusalem occupied territory to which the Jewish state has no rightful claim? In doing so, Archbishop Welby is effectively rejecting the Bible. The Bible is not just a book of theology, it is a book of historical facts. What today the UN and its ICJ calls the West Bank, the Bible calls Yehuda v'Shomron, Judea and Samaria, and lies squarely within the borders of the land that God promised and delivered to the Jewish people, which raises this question: does Archbishop Welby actually believe in the Bible? Are Jews, in his view, illegal occupiers in the land of Israel, the same land of Israel that includes the West Bank, that is mentioned at least 170 times in the Hebrew Bible as the land that God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as an eternal oath, an unconditional covenant? Does the Archbishop believe in the book of Genesis, in which God said to Abraham, I give this land to your descendants? Does he accept the book of Deuteronomy in which God lays out the borders of the land of Israel from the desert to the Lebanon, from the Euphrates River to the Western Sea? What about the book of Joshua, in which under God's instructions the Jewish people enter the promised land, which is then divided among the 12 tribes? The book of Judges details the Jewish people's existence in the land of Israel and all the trials and tribulations they endured. The book of Samuel describes King David establishing Jerusalem more than 3,300 years ago as the capital of the Jewish state. The book of Kings relates how King Solomon built the ancient Jewish temple on Jerusalem's Temple Mount almost 2,000 years before the Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on its ruins. The books of Ezra and Nehemiah document how after the Babylonian exile, the Jewish people returned to Israel and built the second temple in Jerusalem on the same spot. How can anyone who believes in the Bible say that Israel is, as the ICJ says it is, an illegal occupier of the Temple Mount? Does the Archbishop regard these accounts of the Bible as mere myths? How can he agree with the ICJ that Israel is an illegal occupier of Jerusalem? Jerusalem, the same Jerusalem that appears more than 660 times in the Hebrew Bible and about which King David wrote in the book of Psalms, "If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its cunning." If he reads his Bible, the Archbishop should know Jerusalem existed before London and was the capital of Israel before anyone had heard of Britain. Does the Archbishop believe, even his own Christian Bible, that Jesus was born in Bethlehem as a Jew in the land of Israel? Today, Bethlehem lies in the area demarcated by the ICJ as under illegal Israeli occupation. Is he saying that Jesus was born on Palestinian land in a Palestinian state? Or was he born a Jew in Israel? Look, political realities may demand that at some point in the future, Israel give up some of its ancestral land to achieve an accommodation with its neighbors. But it is another thing to say that Israel is an illegal occupier of the land where Jews have been indigenous inhabitants for thousands of years. And the head of the Church of England denying the claims of the Bible in order to support the ICJ is not only a threat to Israel, but to the United Kingdom and Europe as we know it. The Jihadi ideology that seeks to destroy Israel is a clear and present danger to the future of Europe and its value system. Europe's bedrock values of freedom and democracy emerged from Christianity, with its roots in Judaism and the Hebrew Bible. Personal liberty flowed from the foundational ideas of belief in God and the sovereignty of the individual created in God's image as described in the book of Genesis. These values are under attack. With open border policies in the UK and across Europe, immigrants have poured into these countries, many brandishing a violent jihadi ideology deeply hostile to Christianity, to liberal democracy and Western values. Immigration, when managed with respect for the values of the host society, has great potential to enrich Western countries. But when immigrants seek to isolate themselves and overthrow the values of the society they enter, as is happening in Europe today, this poses a dire threat. Entire communities follow a jihadi philosophy, creating no-go areas, ungovernable, in cities like Paris and London, with anti-Semitism surging to the point where Jews feel unsafe in Europe today. Jewish children in London, for example, can no longer wear school uniforms with Jewish emblems in public for fear of being attacked. This tells us that something terrible is wrong. And Europe's foremost religious leaders, Archbishop Welby and Pope Francis, do nothing, say nothing, except to echo the narrative of the same jihadi forces in their barbaric battle against Israel. They also stand passively as their fellow Christians are butchered in Africa by jihadi groups with direct ties to Israel's enemies in Gaza and the West Bank. Groups like Boko Haram, ISIS, and Al-Shabaab that are the ideological brothers in arms of Hamas. Both Archbishop Welby and Pope Francis have largely ignored the crisis or refused to call it by its name. When the horrific kidnappings of Nigerian schoolchildren occurred earlier in March this year, nowhere in Archbishop Welby's or Pope Francis' statements of concern did they mention that the perpetrators were jihadists seeking to wipe out Christianity in Africa? They cannot even name the murderous philosophy that drives these killings and abductions. Their cowardice and lack of moral clarity threatens the future of the free world and stands in stark contrast to Pope John Paul II, who
Take a good look, the most American thing possible.
This is our last clip for the day, and then a prayer for the armed forces.
We got the trees, we have our neighbors, we have our white picket fence, everything Americans want and love.
בנוף הפסטורלי הזה של ניו ג'רזי גדל ג'ונתן כל החיים. בקרוב הוא מבין, בסביבה החדשה שלו יקראו לו קצת יותר יונתן, כשיגשים את החלום הגדול ויעלה לישראל.
Baruch
And you're
Hashem.
leaving all of it.
Leaving all of it. There are some things that are more important in life than a white picket fence.
What's more important for you?
I want my girls to grow up knowing who they are and to have a future in a place where their story is the main story.
By the way, earlier today I played news from Channel 14 and Channel 11. This is Channel 13. There are 4 news stations in Israel.
יונתן הוא אב לשניים, יהודי שגדל באמריקה והתחנך על אהבת ישראל. לקראת גיל השירות החליט להתגייס כחייל בודד לצה"ל.
I have plenty of books for every American Jew. Startup Nation by Dan Senor. A Tanakh that's been used one or two times. A Perfect Peace by Amos Oz. Michael Oren's book. Man, this is a very Jewish Israeli box I got here. Total coincidence, I promise. Haven't seen this in like 10 years, but from the old days.
יש סיבות להישאר באמריקה, אבל יש לא מעט סיבות לעלות לארץ. זאת הכמיהה לישראל שפועמת בו, וגם
There are reasons to live back in New Jersey, and there are other reasons to live in Israel.
חשש ממה שקורה ליהודים בארצות הברית.
האנטישמיות בקמפוסים רק ממשיכה להתגבר.
קבוצה של סטודנטים יהודים נאלצו להתבצר בספרייה.
In light of the anti-Semitism of which you're looking at clips going on in America, in Israel, that is different.
באוניברסיטת קולומביה התקיים אירוע שמצדיק את פעולות חמאס ב-7 באוקטובר.
The rise of anti-Semitism here?
I don't know if it's more than it ever was, but there's definitely a more vocal group here. And it does seem like they're getting more and more power over institutions, over decision makers, policy makers.
עכשיו הוא באריזות רגע לפני, וכשרבים שואלים אותו איך אתה עולה דווקא עכשיו כשהמצב הביטחוני, איך נאמר, לא משהו, הוא עונה ש7 באוקטובר זה מה שגרם לו סופית לרצות.
He's asked by people, well, if you're going to move to Israel, why would you go now when the security issue is so rife? And he says, that's exactly the reason I am going now.
I actually decided 10 years ago, almost to the day. I was a Chayal Boded in Chativat HaTzanchanim.
When he was younger, he individually went to Israel. His family state was still in New Jersey, but he went on his own and joined the Tzava, the IDF, Tzahal, which is known as a Chayal Boded, a lone soldier. And he volunteered to be in a parachute group, the Tzanchanim.
And I fought in Mivtza Tzuk Eitan. I made a neder that if everybody in my machaka made it out of the war unharmed, I would make Aliyah in 10 years. And
so he fought in one of those previous Gaza wars when Hamas broke the previous ceasefire. And as he just said, he made a vow that if 10 years later, that if everybody in his unit gets out alive, 10 years from that time, he's making Aliyah.
At the time, 10 years seemed like a really long time. Far away, it would never happen, and here we are 10 years later. And then October happened, and we knew,
you know,
this
is time to go to Israel.
Yalla.
My dad was a survivor of Auschwitz.
Yalla, of course, is the Arab word. Let's go.
2.5 years in Auschwitz, in the camp itself. And I remember when Yoni, my son, went into the army in 2013, my father said to him, if someone had told me when I was in Auschwitz, living there and having lost my parents and seeing the atrocities day by day, that I would survive Auschwitz and my grandson would serve in the Israeli army, I would have said to that person that they were crazier than Auschwitz was. But to see him really an integral part of the state of Israel brought him immeasurable joy and nachas. And I'm sorry he's not here to send him off, but in spirit he's here and will always be here with us.
So are you going to miss all of that?
I will. I'll miss it. This is, look, where you come from is always your home, no matter what happens. You hear my accent, I'm never going to sound like a proper Israeli. I'll sound...
תנסה.
Israelim, ani ba.
הטיסה עוד רגע יוצאת לדרך, 70 ישראלים חדשים בדרך לעלייה וכולם במטוס נרגשים. בארץ...
So on this flight 70, different Jews were making Aliyah.
כבר מחכים לקלוט אותם.
Very excited, nervous. It's going to be an adventure.
הרבה מאוד עולים שיגיעו למקצועות שונים, למקומות שונים בארץ, והם כולם אומרים דבר אחד. אנחנו עם מדינת ישראל, בטוב ובטוב יותר.
We have a lot of people now coming, and they come from all different places, all different professions, and they're all saying, we are with Israel.
2,000 עולים בקיץ אחד מגיעים בתקופה שבה זה...
2,000 made Aliyah in one summer, and they're coming together.
נראה אולי הכי מטורף. את העלייה הזאת מארגנים ארגון נפש בנפש בשיתוף...
And of course they seem to be crazy, and they're doing it under the rubric of an organization called Nefesh B'Nefesh that helps make this possible, that smooths out a lot of the logistical challenges in moving from one country to another. And Nefesh B'Nefesh works together with the Israeli government's Ministry of Aliyah and Absorption.
משרד העלייה והקליטה והסוכנות היהודית. הם עושים זאת מדי קיץ, כמה וכמה טיסות של עשרות עולים שמגיעים יחדיו. הפעם זה קורה בין חיסול הנייה לאולי מתקפה איראנית, והעולים החדשים לא מבטלים את הכרטיסים, להפך, הם מרגישים שזה נהיה אפילו חשוב יותר לעשות את הצעד הזה.
מרגש כל כך, דווקא עכשיו לקבל עולים, דווקא עכשיו לראות את העם היהודי, שב ארצה, מאמין בצבא שלו, מגיע לכאן.
He's basically saying this is a special time, and people are making the statement that they believe in Israel and they're coming.
בין הטיסות האלה 170 משפחות, לצד 445 רווקים.
170 households, together with 445 unattached male men and women.
ורווקות, וגם 120 צעירים שיהפכו בקרוב לחיילים בודדים. לשם כך נרתמים שלל ארגונים שמסייעים, JNF אמריקה וקק"ל.
How long have you
the JNF is also behind this Jewish National Fund?
been planning that?
Well, I've only been planning since October 7th. She's been planning a little longer in her head.
Was it a hard decision to make specifically during this time to do an Aliyah when, you know, Israel is under attack?
Absolutely not. No. Our mother made Aliyah 2 weeks after, or she moved to Israel 2 weeks after the Yom Kippur War broke out. So this was just something natural, honestly. No question about it.
Do you already have a home in Israel?
Not yet. We're subletting in Yerushalayim for a month and we hope to stay there.
ויש על המטוס הזה גם עולה חדשה לא ממש קונבנציונלית.
I'm feeling pretty excited, a little bit nervous. Yeah.
And I see that you have a special bag on you.
Yes, this is my cat, Ghost. Ghost, do you want to say hi? She's a little shy. Ghost is the first Israeli cat on this flight today. She's making Aliyah with me.
חנה תצטרף בקרוב לצבא, וגוסט, החתולה, הולכת להיות נציגת המשפחה שלה בתקופה הקרובה.
So I'm drafting to the IDF, and even through that, I was very sure that she had to be here with me. And she's, you know, we're doing it together.
Are you going to be a חיילת בודדה?
Yes, that's the plan. I'm very nervous, but...
She will be joining the army also as a lone soldier.
I'm very blessed.
She'll be there with Ghost.
Be doing it with a group of people who are amazing and very supportive, who I love very much, and so, you know, doing it all together, it makes it a little bit less intimidating, less scary.
המטוס מתחיל נחיתה, הפרפרים בבטן כבר ממש מורגשים, עוד רגע ונוגעים באדמה שחלמו עליה, עוד רגע החיים הישראליים מתחילים.
And we are happy the announcements coming in. We're happy and we're very moved to bless and welcome the 70 Olim, the 70 new immigrants who are coming in, who have chosen to make Aliyah to Israel at this time as the El Al flight is landing.
וכאן, בשניות האלה, עם קבלת הפנים החמה הזאת, אין שום ציניות. כשהחלום מתממש, כשקם ונהיה הדבר, כשארץ ישראל הופכת לבית, לא רק הרגשי כפי שהיה עד לרגע זה, אלא גם המוחשי של כל מי שזה אתה, נגע סוף סוף באדמה.
שלום לך ארץ נהדרת.
We're going to come to Israel. We're going to do what we can לחזק את העם היהודי and the מדינה.
We're going to do everything we can to strengthen the Jewish nation.
May he who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, bless the members of Israel's defense forces and its security services, who stand guard over our land and the cities of our God, from the Lebanese border to the Egyptian desert, from the Mediterranean Sea to the approach of the Arabah, and wherever else they are, on land and air and at sea. May the Lord make the enemies who rise against us be struck down before them. May the Holy One, blessed be He, protect and deliver them from all trouble and distress, affliction and illness, and send blessing and success to all the work of their hands. May He subdue our enemies under them and crown them with deliverance and victory. May there be fulfilled in them the verse, "It is the Lord your God who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to deliver you." And let us say, Amen.
And we close with that same prayer in Hebrew as recited by all the news anchors and reporters of Channel 14.
מי שברך אבותינו,
אברהם, יצחק ויעקב.
הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל.
ואנשי כוחות הביטחון.
העומדים על משמר ארצנו וערי אלוהינו.
מגבול הלבנון ועד מדבר מצרים.
מן הים הגדול עד לבוא הערבה.
ביבשה, באוויר ובים.
תן אדוני את אויבינו, הקמים עלינו, ניגפים בפניהם.
הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו.
מכל צרה וצוקה.
ומכל נגע ומחלה. וישלח ברכה והצלחה.
בכל מעשה ידיהם.
ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם.
ויעטרם בכתר ישועה.
ובעטרת ניצחון.
ויקוים בהם הכתוב, כי אדוני אלוהיכם, ההולך עמכם, להילחם לכם עם אויביכם, להושיע אתכם.
ונאמר
אמן.
Thanks everybody for being here today. As always, I know this is going to be Labor Day weekend, and I hope you have a Labor Day weekend. It means a good time. Go out there and take advantage of all those sales. And thanks very, very much for being here. Our program is over. I know Janet has a question, and if you can get to the question, go ahead. And thanks so much. Wonderful turnout. Okay. Be well. Bye-bye.